Welcome to this NLD Referee Society presentation on the referee off the field, produced for the pre-season training day 2019 by Society Modo James Fisher. If you've had the benefit of watching some of the other videos from the day, you will have known that we talk about preparation quite a lot, and the fact that refereeing is not just about the 80 minutes that you're actually on the field. It certainly goes much deeper than that, and it starts right at the beginning of the week before your pre-game planning. So lots of people start their pre-game planning part way through the week. Some people leave it a little bit later, but we have to decide what works for us and when we're going to put our last game to bed, when we're going to finalize the learning points from that and then move it forward. And in certain circumstances, that isn't always going to happen between two games. There will be occasions where you might not have received your feedback yet from your last game, or you're still discussing some of the finer points before you have to do your next one. And the trick here is to make sure that you've taken the salient points that you know definitely need to be worked on, and the bits and pieces from that review. And sometimes this is a review that you're doing yourself, not necessarily with any formal feedback. And you need to take those salient points and try and put them into action. So just bear in mind, this isn't always going to be a put it to bed, start a new game process, and there are going to be times when there will be overlap. But we can't dwell on what's happened before. We all have bad games from time to time. We all make mistakes, and we need to again learn from those in a positive way, take those positives with us, and make sure that we don't dwell on any poor performance, and that we go out to give the best performance that we possibly can each time. So ahead of the game, one of the things that we need to consider is certainly how do we get there. Not everybody has the benefit of having a car, and there are a number of the younger ones within society that do struggle sometimes with transport. They manage it very, very well by looking at what games that they could get to, or clubs they could get to easily, either using public transport such as trains, and getting lifts from the train station to the club. And if you are in that position, then don't be afraid to let our appointments team know that you are reliant on public transport, and they will do their very best to help you. You must also have a look, as we said in the other videos, you must look at the teams that are involved, whether there's any local rivalry, whether there's any issues the last time those teams met. But aside from that, in our pre-game planning, we also have to look at the level of the challenge. So depending on what you're doing in terms of your personal development, there may well be opportunities for you to be challenged beyond your current level. And in that case, you certainly need to step up in the week beforehand, rather than just on the day on the field. So we look at that level of challenge, we look to see where those difficulties might lie, and we prepare accordingly for those. Now, there may be some additional factors which include having a developer or assessor, your coach there, pressure on those participants because it's a cup final or it's a very, very serious game for them. It's in front of a big crowd. It could be a varsity game, something like that, where there's going to be an awful lot of participants and also a lot of people in the crowd watching the game, and you need to be aware of all that as well. So once you've got your outcomes that you want to take into the next game from your self-reflection, make sure that you put those in, and any other areas of your game that you need to consider or want to consider ready for the next game. So if we have a look at that journey then from the final whistle of your game last week, shall we say, there is a process that we're going to follow, a 5-stage process. First of all, there's your final whistle. We're going to warm down. If you've watched the video on nutrition and fitness, you'll know it's important that you warm down properly. Again, I know a lot of people jump straight into the car, but make sure you have that. If you've got a pair of compression tights, make sure that you put them on rather than leaving them in the bag, so that you are better able and better equipped to deal with the game next week. Sit down and go through some feedback, whether that be from your developer, a coach, or a watcher, or even from coaches and captains of the teams that you've just been refereeing. Take that feedback on board, and we'll look a little bit more into receiving feedback later on in this video. Look at yourself. The most honest person and the most dishonest person on the rugby field is probably the referee, because we are by very nature very self-focused, very determined, and we apply things. And we are the sole judge of fact on that rugby pitch. So it can be very, very difficult sometimes to actually take that feedback in the way that perhaps is constructive for us. It does feel quite often as if it's a bit of a negative slur, and it's a mindset that we need to get into to take that away with us and to process it rather than dwelling on it. To develop the development need for us moving forward, and we may well look at things after the event and the feedback you might have been given from a disgruntled captain who is getting grief from his players that you had to work hard with during the game, and he might feel a little hard done to and give you some words of advice. It's up to you how you take them, but do consider them, because even in there with a disgruntled captain, there may well be a good couple of nuggets that you want to take out and go, do you know, he has a point there. So let's listen to it and take that away. So we're going to look ahead, and within NLD, we generally know what our next appointments are going to be, probably 4 to 5 weeks in advance at least. So we're going to look at the appointment that we've got next week, how we're going to get there, and we're going to go back over maybe self-reflections from the last 2 or 3 games, picking out those salient points and our own work-ons ready for the game that's coming up. Sometime during the week you are likely to get confirmation from the club. We normally ask the clubs to make sure that they have confirmed the game with you by at least Thursday evening for a Saturday game. Please remember, if you have not received that confirmation by Thursday evening, let's say 7 p.m, something like that, maybe even earlier, please get in touch with our appointments team, who will chase the club for you. But normally and ordinarily they will have confirmed with you before then. So make sure that you confirm it professionally, check all the details, and obviously get a name and a contact number of somebody who will be at the ground and who can answer should something crop up, such as a flat tyre on the way to the game or something similar. Now, when you are confirming the game, again, part of your pre-match preparation may well be saying, look, what happened last time you guys met, if it's a regular fixture, a regular occurrence, finding out what colours both teams will be playing in, maybe what time they're going to arrive or the club is going to be open, and make sure that you are fully prepared for your journey with that little bit extra added on as well. Next thing to do is to make sure that we are actually ready for the game. So make sure you take all the right kit with you. It's good policy, regardless of whether you keep all your kit in your bag or not, to take it out and repack your bag between games, just to make sure that everything has come out of the wash and that you're not going to worry or become anxious because something's not with you on the day, or you're struggling to find it on game day in the morning, which makes you late leaving. Again, all of these things can build the stress level up, as well as getting stuck in traffic and thinking that you're going to be a bit late. So we want to take that stress level out of the preparation and make sure things are done well in advance and that we leave with plenty of time, obviously. So check the weather report. Do you need your cold weather gear? Are you going to need to make sure you've got a long sleeve undertop, or is it beautiful sunny weather? And obviously not just only plan the route, many of us will use sat nav, I'm sure, or something similar, but have alternatives. And if you are looking on a sat nav or on Google Maps, make sure you know what those alternative routes are. Have a play with them on the routing. And just see what the difference is for you in terms of what time you may have to leave home. And then a good policy is, whatever time you need to leave home, leave about 15 minutes before, just in case. And then finally, the day of the game, again, when you get up in the morning, check your traffic, check those routes again. Do they still hold true from what you saw earlier in the week? Are there any accidents on the motorway that are going to affect your journey time? And replan accordingly. Remember, we say about plan, do and review, and we want to do that even on the beginning of match day. Make sure you've got all the drinks and food that you're going to need. Make sure you take a nutritious breakfast on board. Look at the hydration. Make sure you're getting enough hydration before you leave the house, and that you're maintaining your hydration levels throughout the day. And finally, get in the car or on the push bike or train and hit the road. So when it comes to arriving at the game, we have to determine first and foremost what time we're going to get there. Now, it's good policy to plan to arrive 60 or 70 minutes before kickoff time, perhaps a little bit longer if it's a long journey, just to make sure you've got enough chance to have a comfort break part way on the journey, to get a drink on board if you need to, and also those unforeseen circumstances that might occur during your travel as well. If you've got a team of match officials or it's a big game, again, I would ask you to arrive probably about 90 minutes before the game, because there is an awful lot to do, and allowing 90 minutes means that you've got a good little 10-minute window just in case of any mishaps on the journey. So ask yourself, what is the first thing that you do when you arrive at the ground? For some of us, we may know the ground well. It's to take our bags out of the car, dump them straight into the changing room, and then go and find people. But who actually are we looking for? Do you have a contact you said you'd come and find when you got there? Are you looking just for a member of the club to say, hi guys, I'm here? Are you looking for the home team coach first of all? It's useful to have a pre-match routine, and this part of it will fall into that routine, is to perhaps drop your bags off, go and find the club chairman or somebody similar who you know is going to be there, say hello, get a drink, have a quick chat with them, and then move on to the coaches and people like that to find out what their routine is. They may want you to come and brief them at a specific time, and wherever possible, we'd encourage you largely to fit in with that. And this is another good reason why we would like you there at good 60 or 70 minutes before the game, because very often warm-up sessions now will last 40 to 45 minutes, with a 10 to 15 minute before the kick-off to final arrangements, and a lot of teams won't want to be interrupted during that warm-up. So it's useful to make sure that you ask them, and you could do this in your pre-match preparation. Ask what time they want to be briefed, and fit in with that wherever you can. Make sure if there's any details that you need to confirm about the game that you do so. That may be what regulations we're playing to, and what information do you need before you go and do the briefings. Then find the stakeholders, the captains as well, so that you know who the key figures are in each team. So those briefings that we are going to do, there are three key ones. First of all, we're going to go in and do the stud check with everybody, but we don't need everybody there when we brief them. What we do need to do is talk to the captain, and you may want to do that separately, then bring them together for the toss and a final couple of words. The front row certainly, and if you have any other match officials, you'll need to brief those too. In terms of briefing the captain then, find out who is needed to be there. Some people want their pack leader to be there because the captain is not a front row player, and that's useful to establish is who is the pack leader. Ask the captain, do you mind for forward stuff or scrum stuff if I talk to them, and get an agreement early on. Find somewhere suitable for the briefing to take place. Sometimes that'll be in the change room, sometimes it'll be outside. What's the weather like? Do we want to be standing around just chatting when it's a really, really cold day, or could we do that indoors? Look at that match administration. What regulations are we playing to? have some knowledge of the detail, but the key points specifically. So how many interchanges are they allowed, what's the squad size, and what happens if we have to go to extra time for knockout games. Make sure all the way through that you are professional, you're personable, approachable, and of course confident. Make eye contact with the captain, build that rapport, build that relationship, but make sure that they know that you are in charge. We don't just have self for safety, enjoyment, learning and laws, but you're selling yourself at this point to the captain, to the teams. Now, when it comes to briefing the front row, often they've heard it 30, 40, 50 times, if not more. You need to make sure that you're saying something that they are going to buy into. So the way that you communicate to people is very important. You need to outline what your expectations are of them. That way they take ownership of all of those points. Now, make sure that we focus on safety. That's the main thing. We want everybody to stand up and walk away from the scrum and be able to go to work the following day. We are going to obviously talk to them about axial loading or preloading now and what we expect. We're going to make sure that what we say and what we do is credible. So we must be prepared to follow through and not to back ourselves into a corner. Whatever you do, please try and avoid getting drawn into a what if debate with a player, because as soon as you don't do it because it had no material effect on the pitch, they will say, but you said in your briefing. Things we need to certainly get across is we're not going to move on from phase to phase until everybody is square, level, of equal height and still. So get them to buy into it, get an agreement from the front row, from each one of them, look them in the eye, give them their specific roles so that they invest in that setup process and they know exactly what is expected of them at all times. Now, if you have any other match officials, either appointed by society or union, we need to have a brief for those as well. Now, it is important that we try and get as much of the information out as we can during the week, but we are going to have to find our own style as the referee on the pitch. We are the leader of the team and we need to make sure that we have a buy-in. So we've got to, again, be professional, interpersonal, and of course approachable, and clearly explain the expectations that you have for those members of your team. And this is where it is good to do it in the week beforehand, simply because you can get an awful lot of information across in a briefing, and there is one available to any NLD referee who is going to be managing a team of 3. And if you'd like a copy of that, please just drop us a line at nldreftraining@gmail.com and we'll send that over to you. Now, that allows them to formulate any questions and come on to the game with any points they would like to raise, and it also allows you to quickly go through what your expectations are again and to raise any questions and check understanding. Now, it may well be that earlier in the week when you sent that out, you hadn't been able to put any relevant match information in terms of the teams because you hadn't done the preparation then. So now's the time to do that and to make sure that we can look together as a team at salient points from each of the teams and the players. Above all, make sure that the whole referee team invests in your leadership and in the game, that we all enjoy it and we have a great time as a team of 3 or 4 or more. So post game we need to still remain on duty as the referee, but just be aware of that protected time that we have. So a good 20 minutes or so after the final whistle, where you need to gather your own thoughts, be alone with those or with your team of other match officials. Again, when we first get into that changing room, even with a team of match officials, we want a couple of minutes just on our own to gather our own thoughts before we start discussing the game. So that protected time is there for you to not only gather those thoughts, but have a shower, get yourself sorted, warm down as well. So when you go back outside or stay outside to warm down, you don't want people coming up to you, talking about the game. Your jurisdiction as a match official continues post-match, so all those expectations on you as well as on the club, the captains, the players, the coaches, that all still remains. So what we need to do is make sure that we're looking after ourselves first and foremost. So we need to refuel as well, get your food on board, and do any match administration that is needed, such as signing match cards or entering your details into GMS to confirm scores and things. Make sure you know who the stakeholders are, go and find them, introduce yourself to the club committee or president if you haven't already, and thank them for their hospitality, say hello, and then obviously you want to go and talk to both sets of coaches and captains as well. Just make sure though that whilst you're talking about any feedback they've got for you, that you're not entering into big debates, particularly on key points or detail. What we need to do is to make sure that we take the wider view, and particularly if there have been any cards and they are reportable ones, that we're not entering any debate on those. And we need to have a little bit of an arsenal as to what works for us, and we will use stock phrases such as, well, I was in a good position and that's what I saw, or the picture that I saw was, or for me it was like this. From my position, it looked like this, and that tends to diffuse those debatable points as well. So ultimately, we've got to remain professional, of course. Consider our behaviour, regardless of any provocation or people who want to enter into that debate or want to question your decisions. Be open and approachable, but be prepared to close people down in a very professional way, as we've talked about. And occasionally we will have those people at clubs, and we've probably all been there, who think you're the worst thing that they've ever had, that your decisions were all wrong, and we need to move on from those. And sometimes you're never going to get a buy-in agreement with everybody, and we might just have to say, well, I've got my opinion, clearly you've got yours, and then you need to move on. Be grateful for their feedback. If you want to make notes on it, make notes, consider it. Don't worry about it certainly there and then, and take it in sort of the spirit that it was either meant or needs to be. And that's why it's better to reflect on this feedback a little bit later. Their emotions are still high. If they've lost, it might, and it's a big game, it might still be a bit raw for them, and human beings want to blame somebody else. If you have another referee present or a friend, try and utilise the peer-to-peer support on a larger scale, perhaps not in as much detail, but certainly in the big picture. That's always very useful. Now, as I've said, we all look for somebody to blame as human beings. It's not nice to be criticised, and people often have a defence mechanism that fights against it. You must remember that we give feedback for positive reasons, because it will help you as a match official. So make sure that you receive that feedback professionally. If you're going to challenge it, you do so with integrity, and you consider their opinion honestly. A good way to do this with particularly assessors or your coaches is to, if you're not quite sure or you don't understand what happened in minute 23, then ask them to draw it. Ask them to explain to you what happened before, what happened afterwards as well, so that you can put it into some sort of context. But whenever you're getting feedback, be calm, be approachable, be sincere, and certainly be real as well. And let's hope therefore that we don't see feedback coming like that, because it's not right. So please take those points that we've covered today away with you when you're planning ahead of the game, and when you are reviewing afterwards. Your roles and responsibilities as a referee are not just those 80 minutes. They are much more detailed, and you need to be able to manage that. If again you've got any questions, please seek one of us out at a training session, or email nldreftraining@gmail.com.